In the last 72 hours, something unprecedented happened. Over 47,000 people applied the protocols from Part 2, and the collective electromagnetic signature they generated was so powerful that it registered on quantum field monitoring equipment at 3 separate research facilities. But here's what shook me to my core. We also triggered something else, something that's been lying dormant in human consciousness for millennia. Ancient texts called it the Great Awakening, but they never explained what it actually was until now. What I'm about to reveal in the next 16 minutes isn't just about individual reality creation anymore. We've crossed a threshold. We've activated what I call the collective override protocol. And there's no going back. If you think the changes in your life have been dramatic so far, you haven't seen anything yet. Because today, I'm going to show you how to access the 7th and final level of conscious creation. The level where individual consciousness merges with the quantum field itself, where you don't just create your reality, you become a conscious participant in creating reality for our entire species. But I need to warn you, what you're about to learn comes with consequences that extend far beyond your personal life. Are you ready to discover what humanity has really been evolving toward? The quantum field response, what your awakening actually triggered. Since Part 2 went live, I've been contacted by researchers at Stanford, Princeton, and the Institute of Heart Math. They're all reporting the same phenomenon, a measurable shift in what they call the global consciousness field. Dr. Sarah Chen at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab recorded coherence spikes in their random event generators that correspond exactly with the times Part 2 was being watched most heavily. But here's what's unprecedented. The coherence patterns didn't return to baseline. The field has remained elevated. What this means is that your individual awakening isn't happening in isolation. Every time someone achieves coherence, every time someone successfully applies the 3-phase activation protocol, they're adding their electromagnetic signature to a growing wave of organized consciousness that's becoming self-sustaining. We've reached what complexity scientists call the emergence threshold, the point where individual components combine to create something entirely new. Your awakening isn't just changing your personal reality anymore. It's contributing to the emergence of a new form of collective human consciousness. But here's where it gets both extraordinary and dangerous. This emerging field of organized consciousness is being met with resistance from systems that have maintained human limitation for thousands of years. And I'm not just talking about social or political systems. I'm talking about morphic patterns, thought forms, and what some traditions call archonic influences, organized thought forms that exist in the collective unconscious and actively maintain unconsciousness. The emails, comments, and messages I've received since Part 2 reveal a clear pattern. People aren't just experiencing positive changes. They're also encountering unprecedented challenges, resistances, and what can only be described as psychic attacks, designed to pull them back into unconsciousness. This isn't coincidence. It's evidence that we've triggered what ancient texts called the final battle. Not a physical war, but a consciousness war between the forces that maintain limitation and the emerging potential for human liberation. The 7 levels of reality creation, your complete evolution map. Based on the data from thousands of people applying these protocols, I can now map the complete evolution of conscious reality creation. There are 7 distinct levels, and each one unlocks specific capabilities. Level 1, unconscious creation, 95% of humanity. You create through unconscious patterns, inherited programming, and reactive responses to circumstances. Reality feels like it's happening to you. Level 2, conscious recognition, 4% of humanity. You become aware that your thoughts and emotions influence your experience, but you can't yet control the process consistently. Level 3, intentional influence, 0.8% of humanity. You can consciously influence specific outcomes through focused intention, visualization, and emotional alignment. This is where most manifestation teaching stops. Level 4, frequency mastery, 0.15% of humanity. You understand that reality responds to electromagnetic frequencies, not just thoughts. You can generate specific frequencies and maintain them regardless of external circumstances. Level 5, timeline navigation, 0.03% of humanity. You gain conscious access to parallel probability streams. You can sense different potential futures and select the timeline that leads to optimal outcomes. Time becomes fluid rather than linear. Level 6, collective field integration, 0.005% of humanity. You learn to work consciously with morphic fields and collective thought forms. You can influence group consciousness and protect yourself from collective negativity while contributing to positive collective patterns. Level 7, quantum field merger, 0.001% of humanity. Individual consciousness merges with the quantum field itself. You become a conscious agent of evolution, capable of influencing reality at the fundamental level where possibility becomes actuality. Here's what's unprecedented about our current moment. The protocols I've shared are allowing people to skip levels. Individuals are jumping from level 2 directly to level 5 or 6. This has never happened in recorded history. But with each level comes greater responsibility and greater challenges. Today, I'm going to show you how to navigate all 7 levels safely and unlock the advanced capabilities that become available at each stage. Section 3, 6 to 9. The advanced protocols, timeline navigation, and reality selection. At level 5, you gain access to what I call timeline navigation, the ability to consciously work with parallel probability streams. This isn't science fiction. It's based on Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which suggests that all possible versions of reality exist simultaneously. The timeline sensing protocol, enter coherence using the heart breathing technique from part 2. Once established, pose this question to your superconscious. Show me the probable outcomes of my current trajectory. Don't analyze what comes up, just observe. You'll begin receiving impressions, images, or knowing about where your current frequency is leading. Most people discover they're unconsciously creating futures they don't actually want. This is because their habitual emotional patterns are generating frequencies that align with unwanted timelines. The timeline selection protocol. Once you can sense multiple probable futures, you can begin conscious selection. Focus on the timeline that represents your optimal outcome, not just what you want, but what serves the highest good for all involved. Feel into the frequency of that timeline. What emotions, thoughts, and sensations are present in that version of you? Here's the key. You don't try to force that timeline into manifestation. Instead, you align your current frequency with the frequency of your optimal future self. When you can maintain that alignment consistently, reality reorganizes to match it. The Timeline Acceleration Protocol. Advanced practitioners can accelerate their movement toward optimal timelines by what I call quantum leaping, making decisions and taking actions from the perspective of their optimal future self rather than their current circumstances. This requires what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls elevated emotions, feeling grateful, fulfilled, and excited before your desired reality manifests. When you can generate the emotions of your future success in your present moment, you collapse the time required for that timeline to actualize. But here's where it gets dangerous. Once you begin timeline navigation, you become visible to forces that monitor consciousness evolution. Your expanding awareness triggers what can only be described as psychic attention from entities and thought forms that exist in the collective unconscious. The hidden war, navigating collective thought forms and psychic resistance. This is the information that most spiritual teachers never share because it sounds too conspiracy-oriented. But the data from thousands of awakening individuals is undeniable. As your consciousness expands, you encounter organized resistance that seems to come from beyond individual psychology. Carl Jung called these forces autonomous complexes in the collective unconscious. Rudolf Steiner referred to them as Ahrimanic influences. Gnostic texts describe them as archons. Modern researchers like Dr. Carla Turner and Dr. John Mack documented similar phenomena in their studies of anomalous experiences. Whatever you call them, these are organized thought forms, patterns of consciousness that exist in the collective field and actively maintain limitation, fear, and unconsciousness in human beings. As you begin operating from higher levels of awareness, these patterns will attempt to pull you back into conformity. The resistance patterns you'll encounter. Pattern 1, relationship sabotage. As your frequency rises, relationships based on old patterns become unstable. But beyond natural relationship evolution, you may notice people becoming inexplicably hostile, manipulative, or dramatic around you. This isn't personal. You're triggering their unconscious programming, which is designed to maintain the status quo. Pattern 2, technology and infrastructure interference. Electronics malfunction around people operating at higher frequencies. Cars break down, computers crash, communication systems fail. This happens because your elevated electromagnetic field interferes with technology designed for baseline human frequencies. Pattern 3, financial and legal obstacles. Unexpected financial problems, legal complications, and bureaucratic nightmares often emerge when someone begins accessing higher levels of consciousness. This isn't random. It's systematic pressure designed to force you back into survival mode, where higher consciousness becomes inaccessible. Pattern 4, health and energy attacks. Sudden fatigue, unexplained illness, or energy depletion can occur when your expanding awareness threatens established thought forms. These entities feed on human life force, and awakening consciousness reduces their food supply. Pattern 5, doubt and confusion. Implantation. The most sophisticated attacks come through what seems like your own thoughts. Sudden doubts about your experiences, confusion about your path, or overwhelming urges to return to normal often aren't your authentic thoughts. They're implanted by thought forms attempting to maintain control. The protection and navigation protocols. Protocol 1, the sovereignty declaration. Daily, in a coherent state, declare, I am a sovereign being of light. I choose my own thoughts, emotions, and experiences. No entity, thought form, or influence has power over my consciousness without my explicit consent. This creates an energetic boundary that most low-level interference cannot cross. Protocol 2, the mirror shield technique. Visualize yourself surrounded by a sphere of mirrors facing outward. Any negative energy directed towards you reflects back to its source with the additional information of love and healing. This transforms attacks into healing opportunities for the attacking entity. Protocol 3, the higher dimensional anchor. Connect daily with what you recognize as the highest source of love and wisdom in the universe. This connection creates an energetic anchor to frequencies so high that lower thought forms cannot reach you there. Protocol 4, the collective service orientation. The most powerful protection comes from orienting your consciousness toward service to the highest good of all life. When your motivation is pure service rather than personal gain, you gain protection from the highest levels of conscious intelligence in the universe.